the shooting of the UnitedHealthCare CEO. I'm struggling. My eyes are darting around for his name because he has one of these names where it's, for whatever reason, it just slips through my brain. It's I think, is it a Brian Thompson? I want to get it right. The man is deceased. I feel this is a great, wonderful beginning. Anthony Mays, check on the healthcare CEO's name. The poor guy who got shot.
Brian Thompson, I thought that's what it was.
Okay,
right?
Brian Thompson. I'm right. It's just one of those. It's such a generic name that I go, is it? Anyway, so the guy who is suspected to have killed him, Luigi Mangione, who is being held for all of this, and there's just been so much fallout. And Sarah, I look at this situation as one where you've been public about how you just don't feel it anymore when it comes to the podcasting, when it comes to the culture war, when it comes to everything else. And yet I almost feel like this is a macabre. I don't want to take joy in it. I don't want to be glib with it like a Taylor Lorenz, but this is the sort of situation that's culturally interesting enough that just when you thought that you were out, perhaps they've pulled you back in. Is there something to that with this whole situation?
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I don't think not quite. It's just it does really feel like I'm starting to have the same arguments over and over, right? I mean, this particular episode, what shocked me was not so much the shooting itself, but the reaction to the shooting. That's what really got me going, and it reminded me of the conversations a few years ago about, remember punching Nazis and disrupting power through violence here and there. So it feels like we're having some of the same conversations again, except the people who are so gleeful about the prospect of this vigilante, shooter. I feel like that base has grown. I feel like there's more of them, and they're not just on the left. So that's new, and that's alarming. So I do feel a little bit pulled back in the sense that, oh no, what's happening? We have to do,
Okay. I'm thinking about which direction to take this because I was shocked as well. I was surprised. I talked to a comedian friend of mine. He works in comedy. He sometimes comes on this podcast. Matt, if you're listening, I literally asked you if I could share this detail, and you said yes yesterday. So I'm just going to share it. He was telling me that his friends in the LA comedy scene love this guy. They loved him before he was even caught, potentially, allegedly, and revealed to be hot. Yeah. And they just loved this guy who killed a random healthcare executive that none of us have heard of prior to this. And that was surprising to me. Perhaps I'm in a bubble of reasonable people who wouldn't have that reaction, even if we might understand that the healthcare system has a lot of problems and people might have resentment for it. I guess that's something that is well subscribed in that particular art scene of liking it. But then it gets to this level of how much do they really mean it? Because this is part of this overall theme about how life is just one big abstraction that happens on our phones. Because I was asking him, I was saying, well, if you could offer them a button to undo it, return this guy to life. I believe he has 2 children. Would they push the button? My friend said yes, that they would do it if given to them. So they love this guy. They've got this visceral reaction and support for what he did, and yet they would undo what he did. Does that sound irreconcilable to you, or does that make sense?
I think there's something about the style of it that seduces people. And I agree with you that there's something, performative about it as well. Did you know that there was this like intense sense of frustration and even like anger, like to the point of violence against the healthcare industry in particular? Were you aware of this?
Okay, I'll be honest. I'm skeptical of this sort of argument in general. Yeah. And it's not to say that the healthcare system in the United States functions well. I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we pay far more than we should, and people are immiserated by certain conditions, but it seems rather convenient. And it reminds me of arguments that were made in 2020 when there were riots after all of these shootings, that you simply had to understand the pain. You had to understand the pain people were feeling. And the person lecturing you on that would then never return to that topic again over the next few years.
Right.
And so it does look like a little bit of rationalization for wanting to indulge in the vicarious thrill of violence for people who might not feel all that tough in real life. At least that's my take.
Right. Yeah, that's my sense as well. Not that I don't understand that there was and is a general sense of frustration, but the healthcare industry, insurance industry is not alone in that regard. I would say there are many, different industries that people feel are not functioning as healthily as they could be. And, it's not really working out for the consumer and for the average citizen. And I too saw just this rise of like criticism against this particular industry from people who had never voiced it before. And as you point out, are unlikely to voice it again. So it does feel a little bit as if this is the avatar for a general sense of malaise, anxiety, dissatisfaction that we have. Maybe we feel as if we don't have a lot of agency in our own personal lives, and this is how we're going to feel empowered for even a second.
Well, okay, on that theme, do you think that this has any connection to the election results? That there's a sense right now on the left side of things of, look, maybe democracy doesn't work. Maybe this is how things work. Maybe this is how things get done. I mean, we're told these fairy tales about how everything should be nonviolent, but when you look at these revolutionary movements, there's usually at the very least a good cop, bad cop, where there's the nonviolent part of it, but then there's the scary part of it that compels actual justice to take place. So perhaps we could indulge these fairy tales, these cartoons with the bill on the steps of Congress about how things get done. In the dirty real world, this is how things actually get done. And now we've had reason to disbelieve that getting the public on our side is where it's at. Perhaps this is where it's at. Do you think there's a strain of that happening, articulated or maybe just felt subconsciously?
Definitely. And it's hard not to feel that in itself is just enormous cope, because what are the chances that this is going to have any kind of a benefit for the consumer? If anything, if I was a betting woman, I would bet that things are about to get a little bit more tricky and difficult for the average person in ways that we might not grasp immediately, because this is a complex system. There are complex, trade-offs happening. We don't know exactly what lever will, what will it topple in the end. And so I think that this is foolish, that the ghoulishness around the shooting is foolish. I hope that people are feeling, whatever it is that they're feeling, whatever frustration that they have, can be oriented in a more healthy direction, but I'm not entirely positive. I didn't immediately connect what happened just now to the election, but it's interesting that you say that. And I guess it's one way to feel, again, as if you have a sense of control over your universe, or there's something you can do, something you can say, some gesture that would, that would put out into the world the sense of dissatisfaction that you yourself have. But that's, I mean, it's not solving any problems, I mean, I don't find it romantic. I find it to be actually pretty selfish and coming from a perspective of like a privileged young man. And I wasn't surprised when, in fact, he did turn out to be, of wealth, quote unquote, of a person
of wealth.
I mean, it's hard to know, right? I mean,
POW is the traditional moniker for that.
I mean, the
Anyway.
details are coming out, so we don't know for sure, and exactly what his particular situation was. It could be that he comes from this family of means, but he himself did not have a lot in the moment. But it does. The picture is not as simple as the one that I think was first assumed by just everybody.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a reminder. And again, I'm trying not to be glib about this because a man is dead. A young man appears to have ruined his life and killing him. But it's got this feature where reality, as the cliche goes, is stranger than fiction. But even more so, it's not even just stranger than fiction. It almost operates on this level of that's bizarre, but I immediately intuitively recognize it as true. And it's why I think a lot of the great fiction has to hew so closely to real events, because who could make up a thing like this?
Yeah.
We're still learning details. Whatever we're talking about might be confounded by some new revelation, but it would appear that the person who did this did not have a cliche leftist politics. They might have been regarded as a radical centrist, given some of the people that they follow. A few of these people are my friends, and nobody quite knows what to do with that. I don't think anybody before this suspect was revealed said, you know who I think did this? I think it was an absolutely jacked, handsome Italian Ivy Leaguer Huberman bro podcast fan. That's who I think killed the healthcare executive in this fit of leftist outrage. I don't think anybody would have expected a thing like that, and yet that is the current narrative we're dealing with.
Yeah, I didn't think too much about who the shooter would turn out to be. Having said that, it's not to say that I wasn't surprised when I did see I just went to Twitter and I found his profile that people had started to link to, and it was not at all the person that I would have expected. But at the same time, we do see that he sort of dropped off the map a few months ago, at least in his public online activity.